In a world obsessed with filters and facades, the most powerful magnetism comes from what we dare not show. What if the key to becoming truly unforgettable isn't found in perfection, but in the courage to be unapologetically real? Carl Jung, the master of the human psyche, revealed a profound truth. We don't desire what appears flawless. We're drawn to what feels authentic. The 7 paradoxical traits of an unforgettable person are not about charm or performance. They're not what society told you to polish. They live in your quiet moments, your shadows, your contradictions, the things you've been taught to suppress. We live in a time where it's normal to curate your personality like an aesthetic, controlled, calculated, camera-ready. But real presence, real energy, it's the person who doesn't need to chase attention to be remembered. It's the one who doesn't need to talk loud to be felt. And that presence is available to you, not by changing who you are, but by returning to who you were before the world told you to edit yourself. This video isn't just about being noticed, it's about becoming undeniable. We're going to uncover 7 traits that aren't loud or obvious, but they are powerful. Stoicism teaches us that strength isn't about control over others, but mastery of the self. And in mastering your inner world, you become the kind of person who commands respect without demanding it. So if that resonates with you, if you're the kind of person who's tired of playing small, tired of the noise, tired of seeking and ready to embody, then you're exactly where you need to be. And hey, if what we're building here speaks to something deeper in you, there's a simple free favor you can do to keep this message growing. Hit that subscribe button. It tells the algorithm, but more importantly, it tells you that this kind of conversation matters. Let's get into it. Secret 1. Don't be a filtered version of yourself. It's strange, isn't it? How somewhere along the way being real became risky, like showing your full personality, your honest emotions, your messy truth, suddenly became something to apologize for. We're in a time where filters aren't just for photos anymore. They've crept into how we talk, how we move, how we connect. Everyone's performing, subtly, constantly. Smile here, numb there, laugh at what's not funny. Stay quiet when your heart wants to speak. And for what? For approval that never really lasts. Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. But what if most people never even get there because they're too busy playing characters just to fit in? The problem is, when you perform for long enough, you start mistaking the role for your identity. And when you do that, even you forget who you really are. That's the cost of hiding. Not just being unseen by others, but becoming invisible to yourself. Carl Jung, the brilliant mind who reshaped modern psychology, once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that's not a privilege the world hands you. It's one you fight for. And the fight starts when you stop trying to be liked and start trying to be real. The most unforgettable people aren't the ones with perfect timing or curated feeds. They're the ones who make you feel something, who show up without the emotional costume, who give you the raw, unedited version of their soul and say, "Here I am." Stoicism reminds us not to get swept up in external impressions. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because stepping into your true self often looks uncomfortable to people who are still hiding, and that's okay. You're not here to perform your life. You're here to live it, fully, fearlessly, and honestly. Think of the people you've never forgotten. Odds are they weren't the most polished, they were the most present. Maybe it was their laugh, or the way they didn't flinch when you opened up. Maybe it was how they cried openly, or admitted they were scared, or owned their weird without shame. That's what stays with us. Not perfection, but presence. And when you show up like that, without trimming down your truth to fit someone else's comfort, People don't just notice you, they feel you. Plato spoke of the shadows on the cave wall, how most people only see reflections of truth, never the real thing. But when someone walks out of the cave and dares to live in full light, they become different. Uncomfortable maybe, but unforgettable, because realness has weight, it has gravity. It pulls people in, not because it's flashy, but because it's rare. So why do we keep hiding? Fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of being too much. But here's what most people don't understand. Shrinking yourself to fit in doesn't make you more loved. It makes you easier to forget. And you were never meant to be forgettable. Socrates believed in self-inquiry, in constantly examining our choices, our beliefs, our patterns. So ask yourself honestly, where am I pretending just to be accepted? What part of me have I edited, silenced, or dimmed just to blend in? That's the mask. And the moment you start peeling it off, even slowly, even awkwardly, you step into something much more powerful than approval. You step into freedom. Because when you show up as your whole, unfiltered self, something incredible happens. The people who are meant for you stop looking past you, and the ones who were only interested in your mask, they drift. And that's exactly how it's supposed to be. The goal isn't to be liked by everyone. The goal is to be authentically you, and let that authenticity act as a filter, a sorting mechanism, because the real ones, they're not drawn to the performance, they're drawn to the person beneath it. So stop shrinking, stop toning it down, laugh a little louder, cry when it's real, speak when your voice shakes, be messy, be honest, be fully you. That's not too much, that's magnetic, and it's the only kind of presence that's impossible to fake or forget. Secret 2. Grow without losing yourself. There's something beautiful about watching someone evolve, not just in what they achieve, but in who they become. You notice it in how they speak, how they walk into a room, how they handle silence and setbacks. There's a calmness, a clarity, an energy that wasn't there before. That's not luck or genetics. It's growth, real, intentional growth. And the people who carry that kind of presence, the ones you never forget, they didn't get there by accident. They got there by choosing to grow when it would have been easier to stay the same. Plato once said that the highest form of learning is remembering who you truly are. And here's the paradox. Becoming your best self doesn't mean changing into someone else. It means returning to your core and upgrading everything around it. It means stripping away the layers that never belonged to you in the first place, the expectations, the guilt, the pressure to conform, and stepping deeper into your essence. You're not reinventing yourself to impress others. You're refining yourself to honor your truth. Carl Jung believed in the process of individuation, the slow and sometimes painful journey of integrating your shadow, your light, your contradictions, and becoming a unified self. He said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And isn't that what this is all about? Waking up. Not to the noise of the world, but to the stillness within you. That's where the real growth begins. Not in changing to fit the world, but in evolving to reflect your highest values. The Stoics had no interest in outer appearances. They didn't chase fame, trends, or approval. They chased mastery of the self. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and a practicing Stoic, wrote daily to remind himself, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one." That's the kind of growth we're talking about here. Not performative, not reactive, but purposeful, quiet, grounded. And here's what separates the magnetic from the mediocre: intention. Most people grow because they feel pressured to. They see someone else doing more or being more, and they panic. They change their clothes, their tone, their circle, not out of alignment, but out of anxiety. That's not evolution. That's insecurity in disguise. But the ones who are unforgettable, they evolve because they've outgrown their old patterns. They've outgrown mediocrity. They're not trying to keep up. They're trying to go deeper. Socrates urged his students to live an examined life, to constantly reflect, ask questions, challenge their thinking, and the same applies to you. Ask yourself, why am I changing? Is this growth for me, or is this pressure from someone else? Because here's the hard truth. If you don't direct your evolution, the world will do it for you. It'll shape you with comparison, with doubt, with fear. But when you grow by choice, not by default, you don't lose yourself. You expand into more of yourself. Think of it like upgrading your phone. The core stays the same, it's still yours, but now it moves faster, works smarter, runs cleaner. That's what personal growth is. It's not becoming someone different, it's becoming someone deeper. You learn how to respond instead of react. You stop explaining your worth. You start walking in a room without needing to prove anything, because your presence already speaks. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So if you want to become unforgettable, start building habits of evolution. Reflect often, refine your values, let go of what no longer feels like home. Hold on to what strengthens your spirit, and most importantly, level up because you chose to, not because someone else made you feel like you weren't enough, but because you finally realized you've always been more than they could see. The world doesn't remember those who stayed the same to keep the peace. It remembers those who kept growing, even when it made people uncomfortable, not because they were trying to stand out, but because they were trying to live in full alignment. And that kind of alignment, that kind of presence, that's what makes you unforgettable. So evolve, not to escape who you were, but to embody more of who you are. Stay grounded in your truth, but never stop becoming. Secret 3. Own your flaws like a boss. There's something magnetic about someone who stops pretending. Not in a dramatic, rebellious way, but in that calm, grounded, take it or leave it kind of way. The kind of person who's made peace with their past, their flaws, their messy middle chapters. They don't flinch when you ask about the parts of their story that didn't go well. They don't shift in their seat when they talk about the things they've survived. They own it, all of it. And that ownership, that's where the real power lives. Most people spend their lives trying to sand down their edges, to hide the parts of themselves that don't look polished or pretty. They want to be liked, approved, chosen. But the irony? The more you hide your truth, the more forgettable you become. Because perfection isn't relatable, it's distant. What people connect with, what they remember, is your realness, your bounce back, your scars, and how you've turned them into stories instead of secrets. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And that's the shift. You are not your past. You are the meaning you make from it. You're the growth that came from the heartbreak, the wisdom that came from the mistake, the strength that came from what didn't break you, even though it tried. When you stop apologizing for what you've been through and start standing on it like a foundation, your energy changes. People feel it, and they remember it. Stoicism teaches us that the obstacle is the way, that the things we try to avoid, pain, failure, rejection, are often the very things that forge us into something unshakable. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. So if you've got flaws, scars, failures, good. That means you've got material. You've got a story. And people don't remember stories that are smooth. They remember the ones with depth, with grit, with truth. Now ask yourself this: what's one part of you that you've been hiding? Not because it's wrong, but because you thought it made you hard to love. The thing that made you too emotional, too intense, too complicated. What if that part isn't your weakness, but your gift? What if the thing you've been trying to mute is actually the one thing that makes you unforgettable? Plato believed that the soul is composed of reason, spirit, and desire, and that the goal is not to suppress any of them, but to balance them. You weren't designed to be one-dimensional. You're not meant to live in emotional neutrality. You were made to feel, to want, to break and rebuild. That tension inside you, that mix of ambition and vulnerability, fear and courage, it's what makes you human. And embracing all of it is what makes you whole. We live in a culture that teaches us to hide what makes us different, to filter our personality, our voice, our emotions. But the truth is, the people who are the hardest to forget are the ones who never asked for permission to be real. They just showed up as they were, messy, evolving, fully present. And that presence, that's what stays with you. That's what shifts a room. That's what turns ordinary people into forces of nature. Socrates once said, "Know thyself." But knowing yourself isn't just about understanding your strengths. It's about facing your shadows. It's about looking at the things you once called flaws and seeing them as facets. Every part of you belongs, even the ones you tried to silence, especially those. So no, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to wait until you've healed every wound or figured everything out. You just need to show up, as you are, with your story, with your voice, with your scars. Because real confidence doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from being fearless in your authenticity. When you stop trying to hide the parts of yourself that once felt like liabilities, and you start owning them as lessons, as strengths, as parts of your soul's fingerprint, you become unforgettable. You become magnetic. Not because you're perfect, but because you're whole. So here's the challenge. Whatever you've been hiding, revisit it. Hold it with compassion. Then ask yourself, what if this is the part of me the world needs most? And when you're ready, bring it into the light. Because someone out there is waiting for your realness to give them permission to stop hiding too. Secret 4. Stop needing, start choosing. There's a quiet kind of power that comes when you stop waiting. Waiting to be liked, waiting to be picked, waiting for someone to validate your worth. Most people don't realize how much energy they give away just trying to be wanted. It starts subtle. You overthink your texts. You water down your opinions. You say yes when your gut screams no. And all of it, underneath the surface, is rooted in a desperate little question. Am I enough for them? But here's the truth, and it might sting a little. The more desperate you are to be chosen, the smaller you begin to feel. You shrink to fit. You adapt. You hustle for connection. And it's exhausting. What you're really doing is giving away your power, one compromise at a time. Not because you're weak, but because somewhere along the way, you forgot that you were the one holding the door. The moment you flip that script, everything changes. You stop asking, do they want me? And you start asking, do they align with where I'm going? That single shift, from chasing to choosing, flips the energy in the room. You're no longer hoping someone sees your value. You're evaluating whether they add value to you. You're no longer playing the game of approval. You've stepped into your role as the gatekeeper of your own life. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that's why most people never step into this mindset, because choosing instead of chasing means you've got to know what you actually want. You've got to trust your intuition. You've got to look at your life, your values, your future, and ask, Does this person, this environment, this situation support the person I'm becoming? Not the person you were, the person you're evolving into. The Stoics called this ataraxia, a state of inner peace, free from disturbance. And one of the fastest ways to destroy that peace is by making your worth dependent on other people's preferences. Epictetus taught that true freedom comes from placing your well-being within your own control, not the hands of others. So when you stop performing and start protecting your energy, you create space for peace, for clarity, for real connection. Let's be honest, people are drawn to what they can't control. When your energy isn't for sale, when your time isn't handed out like samples at a store, people notice. They lean in, because suddenly you've become rare. And what's rare? It's respected, it's valued, it's protected. Socrates often challenged people not just to live, but to live wisely. And wisdom means not everyone gets a seat at your table. No matter how charming, how loud, or how persistent they are, your energy is currency. Your presence is a gift. And the most unforgettable people are the ones who know that and act accordingly, not from ego, but from self-respect. This isn't about arrogance, it's about alignment. When you know who you are, and more importantly, who you're becoming, you stop looking for someone to complete you. You start looking for people who complement you, people who walk beside you, not people who drain you, distract you, or dim your light. So take a breath and ask yourself honestly, am I choosing right now, or am I chasing? Am I trying to prove that I'm worthy, or am I standing in the truth that I already am? Because when you start choosing, when you start curating your circle with intention, the game changes. Not because you've become someone else, but because you finally started honoring the person you've always been. The right people won't make you question your worth. They'll recognize it. And when they do, they won't just stay, they'll rise to meet you. Because that's what happens when your energy becomes rare. The world adjusts to your frequency, not the other way around. Secret 5. Be intense, without apology. There's a quiet rebellion in staying true to your emotional depth in a world that keeps trying to dial you down. You've probably heard it more than once. You're too much, too emotional, too intense, too sensitive. But what they really meant was, you feel things I'm not comfortable feeling. You express things I don't know how to hold. And instead of facing their own emotional limitations, they tried to make you smaller, easier, quieter. But here's the truth. People who feel deeply, love deeply. And that depth, it's not a flaw, it's a gift. The people who bring color to the world are the ones who refuse to live in grayscale. The ones who cry at movies, who notice when someone's energy changes, who love without holding back, who care even when it's inconvenient. They make life richer, more human, more alive. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." People who feel deeply are often the ones who've touched both the light and the dark. They know the full spectrum of experience, and that's what makes them unforgettable. They're not numb, they're present. And in a world that rewards detachment and calls it strength, emotional depth becomes a rare and powerful kind of courage. The Stoics never said to avoid emotion, they said to master it. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a person perfected without trials." Feeling isn't weakness, it's feedback, it's insight, it's the raw material from which we carve meaning. Emotional intensity, when grounded, becomes clarity, it becomes purpose, it becomes passion that drives change and connection and creation. Plato believed that the soul is nourished by beauty, and beauty isn't just found in things we see. It's in the way someone feels fully, the way someone loves loudly, the way they burn with purpose and speak with fire in their voice. That's the kind of beauty that doesn't fade. That's the kind of presence that lingers in memory long after the moment has passed. So if someone tells you you're too much, understand this: they're revealing the limits of their capacity, not the excess of yours. Your emotional range isn't something to apologize for, it's something to honor. Your ability to feel deeply is a mirror to the parts of the world that have gone numb. You bring light into the places that others have forgotten how to see. Socrates challenged his students to examine their lives, to look at the ways they edited themselves to fit into a system that was never built for their full selves. So maybe it's time you asked yourself, where have I shrunk to be more palatable? And what would it look like to stop apologizing for my intensity and start celebrating it? Because here's what makes you magnetic: your willingness to feel when others freeze, your ability to sit in the storm and still hold space for joy, the way you light up when you talk about what you love. That's not too much, that's soul, that's presence, that's you without the dimmer switch. So the next time someone tells you you're too much, look them in the eye, smile with grace and say, then go find less. Because your intensity is not a burden, it's your brilliance. And the people who are meant for you, they won't just accept it, they'll rise to meet it. Secret 6. Hold your standards without guilt. There's a quiet kind of power that comes when you stop settling, not because you've become bitter or jaded, but because you've finally realized your worth doesn't need to be negotiated. A person who knows what they deserve becomes dangerous, not to others, but to every situation that once thrived off their uncertainty. They stop begging for breadcrumbs when they know they're the whole table, and they stop over-explaining their standards to people who were never meant to sit with them in the first place. When you truly understand your value, your energy shifts. You no longer chase people who give you mixed signals. You don't entertain environments where you're constantly proving your worth. You walk away, not to make a statement, but to protect your peace. Because your peace, it's no longer up for compromise. That kind of self-respect is rare, and anything rare becomes sacred. That's why people fight to stay in the lives of those who carry it. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And one of the fastest ways to waste your life is by constantly lowering your standards just to keep the wrong company. It's not noble to stay where you're undervalued. It's not humble to tolerate what depletes you. That's not kindness. It's self-abandonment in disguise. Carl Jung believed that every step towards self-realization begins with self-respect. He wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Why terrifying? Because once you accept yourself fully, you stop needing others to do it for you. You stop tolerating less just to feel enough. You stop hoping someone else will give you what you're now willing to give yourself: peace, presence, and power. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors with locks. And the key is your discernment. The more you honor your boundaries, the more you attract people who respect them. The ones who get access to your time, your space, your energy. They'll know it's a privilege, not a guarantee. And that's exactly why you become unforgettable, because your presence becomes intentional, not transactional. Plato taught that the measure of a person lies not in how much they possess, but in how little they need to feel whole. And when you live from that mindset, something magical happens. You stop needing external validation to feel complete. You become your own standard, your own source. You don't settle because you're not empty. You walk away because you're full. So revisit your standards today, not your wish list of nice-to-haves, the height, the job title, the vacation plans. Revisit your non-negotiables, the values, the energy, the way someone listens to you, speaks to you, shows up for you when it's inconvenient. Ask yourself, what am I accepting that goes against the life I say I want? And then answer with action, not just insight. Because once you stop settling, you stop suffering. And once you start honoring your value, the world does too. The people who fear losing you the most, they're not afraid of your attitude. They're afraid of your alignment. That moment when you finally say, I know what I bring, and I'm no longer placing it where it's not cherished. That's the shift. That's the energy. And once you tap into that, you won't need to chase anyone ever again. Secret 7. Love from fullness, not from lack. Real love, the kind that lasts, the kind that nourishes, doesn't come from desperation. It doesn't come from the frantic search to be needed or validated. It comes from fullness, from self-respect, from the deep inner knowing that you are already complete, with or without someone else. When you love from a place of emptiness, it's not really love, it's need. It's attachment disguised as connection. It's asking someone else to be the oxygen you never learned to breathe on your own. And that weight? It's suffocating. Not just for you, but for the other person. Because suddenly, they're not just your partner, they're your emotional life support. And no one can carry that forever. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "Only the educated are free." But he didn't just mean book smart, he meant self-aware. When you become emotionally educated, you realize it's not anyone else's job to fix you, complete you, or rescue you. That work is yours. And once you do it, once you start healing, building, and grounding yourself in your own worth, love becomes something you give, not something you chase. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And when you become that, when you're no longer performing, pleasing, or pretending, your energy shifts. You don't walk into relationships looking to be saved. You walk in ready to share. Not your emptiness, but your overflow. That's where the magic is. When you fill your own cup, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, everything changes. Your love becomes peaceful, not possessive, encouraging, not exhausting, uplifting, not overwhelming. And the people around you can feel that. They stop feeling like they have to manage your moods or carry your pain. Instead, they rise in your presence because you're not leaning on them to survive. You're standing with them to grow. Plato believed that love was the pursuit of wholeness, a longing to reunite with what was once lost. But here's the paradox. The more whole you become on your own, the more powerful your love becomes. Because it's no longer about filling a void, it's about expanding a life. You're not attaching from fear, you're connecting from strength. Think about that for a second. The people who are the hardest to lose are the ones who don't need you, but choose you. They're solid, grounded, and yet they let you in. They share their world with you, not because they have to, but because they want to. That's why their love hits different. It's not frantic, it's calm, it's secure. Socrates said, "Know thyself." And part of that knowing is recognizing when your desire for connection is really a cry for healing, because once you see it for what it is, you can stop outsourcing your happiness and start building it from within. That's how you become someone no one wants to lose, not because you're perfect, but because your love isn't a demand, it's a gift. So fill your own cup, not halfway, not enough to get by. Fill it to the brim, with purpose, with peace, with presence. And then let the right people drink from the overflow. The ones who are meant for you won't drain you. They'll match you, grow with you, honor you, because the most powerful love you'll ever give starts with the love you give yourself. And once you learn to source it from within, you stop clinging and you start radiating. The world may forget what you wore, what you said, even what you did, but it will never forget how your presence made people feel, steady, strong, undeniable. That's the energy of someone who's done the inner work. And when you carry that, you don't have to chase anything. You attract everything. If this stirred something in you, there's more waiting. One of the videos on the screen right now might be exactly what your soul's been asking for. Go find it. Thank you for being here. Keep choosing growth. Keep choosing peace. And when you're ready for the next step, you'll know where to find us.